goal!
They score!
That's it! Yes! 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 The Stars win the Stanley Cup! The Stars win the Stanley Cup!
Unbelievable!
June 19th, 1999. Ken Hitchcock's Dallas Stars were Stanley Cup champs. Now, after 15 years and 3 stops across the league, Hitch is home.
I feel that this is an unbelievable opportunity for me, but I also feel I owe this organization everything.
He has some new superstars on board and a team hungrier than ever to get back to the top. Hitchcock Full Circle starts now. Welcome to Hank Haney's Golf Ranch in Dallas, and welcome to Hitchcock Full Circle. Ken Hitchcock is a future Hall of Fame head coach. He's a figurehead around the NHL, and he's a very familiar face to hockey fans in Texas. This is one of Hitch's old hangouts. It's somewhere that he suggested when we discussed the vision for this show. To start things off here on Hitchcock Full Circle, here's Hitch on why this is a very special place.
I became really good friends with Hank and Steve Johnson, and it was a place for us as a staff to hang out. It was as much a social setting as it was a hit golf balls or practice setting. It just felt comfortable. I would come here and just hang out. It was really relaxing for me to just come and hit balls to get rid of the stress. And there was a lot of times during playoffs that I'd go and after pregame skate or whatever, I'd go and just hang out and hit balls.
With 781 NHL wins to his name, there's no doubt that Hitch has some pretty good stories to tell out on the course. But now let's go back to the very beginning, where it all started for former sporting goods salesman Ken Hitchcock. So you coached the Sherwood Park, the midget AAA team for the better part of a decade. You led them to a record of 575 and 69. Can you just talk a little bit about that experience and how you knew within that time that this is what you were going to make a career of?
Before I started coaching in midget, I got into coaching by accident. All my friends had continued on in hockey and I'd stopped playing. And the year before I started coaching midget hockey, I coached junior, which was 19 to 21 years of age. And I fell in love with it. I only coached about 15 games, but I fell in love with it. I had a career in sporting goods and a career in coaching, and I had these 2 careers. One was obviously for a living, but the other, coaching hockey, was a volunteer job, and I loved every minute of it. And we built a program there that became kind of the program in midget hockey, and it was a fantastic experience, and it was just the right fit for me as a person at that time in my life.
So from that point on, you had a couple stops as an assistant, spent some time in Kamloops, then you found yourself in Dallas with your first NHL head coaching job. Can you just kind of walk us through that transition a little bit and how you found yourself here in Dallas?
My experience as an assistant coach in Philadelphia wasn't great. It wasn't a good experience. Our team, I was just so used to winning. Between midget hockey and junior hockey, all I knew was winning. It was my first experience at not winning, and it was a really tough experience. At the end of my 3rd year, I got a call from Les Jackson, who at that time was assistant general manager of the Dallas Stars. And he said, there's an opening in Kalamazoo for our farm team. Would I apply for the head coaching job? And would I be willing to fly to Minneapolis to talk to Bob Gainey? He said, the team's moving to Texas, and would I be interested in coaching the farm team? And I went for an interview with Bob, and I've never felt more relaxed and more at home in my life. That interview completely changed my life.
So you get the head coaching job here in Dallas. What values were important to you back then to carry on as a head coach, and how do you think you kind of came to have those values?
The lesson I learned is I came here in January of '96, and I brought a system of play that was very successful in minor pro hockey. And I tried to put the system towards the players rather than the other way. And I learned a very valuable lesson is you have to fit your system around what the players are capable of. I tried in my first 3 months to force feed a system into Dallas, and it did not work. From January to April, we did not play very well, and a lot of it was my fault because I tried to put a system in play that the players weren't capable of playing. I spent the summer here, and I had long talks with the two assistant coaches, Rick Wilson and Doug Jarvis, and they convinced me to change. They said, you got to tailor this system based to our personnel. And they convinced me to change, and it was, from a coaching standpoint, one of the best things that ever happened. And we came back, and right away, we took off that next year. We ended up in first place. We had a huge point jump, but a lot of it was because of Rick and Doug convincing me to change.
As long as we got one of these, why not go for two? Oh, hell, let's go for three.
Talking about that team you had here in Dallas and your time here in Dallas, what did you most enjoy?
Well, it's funny, you don't think about it until you leave. And I never really started to think about this group until really the last 4 or 5 years. We went on a long run here. We were 5 or 6 years in a row in first place. We were a perennial top team. And the way I would describe living here is first of all, from a coaching standpoint, I coached a cast of characters that had tremendous character. They were a joy to be around because it was never dull. I mean, there were times I drove them nuts, there were times they drove me nuts. They had tremendous compete and character inside that locker room. I told people, this is one of the most unique places to coach. And I don't know if it's the city or the state or whatever, but there is nothing that Texans don't think they can't do. They feel they can do anything, and they feel they're capable of doing anything. And I found that to be really refreshing.
So you probably, in your time here, saw a very large evolution within the fan base. How promising is it that you have seen just how hockey crazy the city can get?
Well, I think the best way to describe it is when I showed up here in January '96, there were 3 high school teams. 2 years later, there were 31. Maybe 250 kids playing hockey in all aspects, beginners to AAA, and within 2 years there was over 1,500. The game was exploding, and we had developed a young fan base of families and kids that, to me, kept this program together for a long, long time. And we played our part by winning, but it was the personalities of the players that became contagious. I think the community really embraced the type of personality that the hockey player had.
What was it like kind of being the hockey team in the football city back then, and were you a fan of the Cowboys at all?
I wasn't a fan of the Cowboys, but I was a fan of players on that team. We were all huge fans of Troy Aikman. You know, it was like, we had our man crush on Troy Aikman, and Troy for me was like the ultimate professional. To me, the Cowboys were just Texas, because they were like, you're gonna do it, we're gonna do it right, we're gonna do it big. They forced other professional sports to keep up. I gotta tell you, some of their players were really impressive people that we got to meet and know.
Any in particular you got to know?
Well, Troy was a guy that we really got to know well. We were lucky enough to be introduced to guys like Roger Staubach and people like that. Just the whole recognition of what Tom Landry meant to the team, and then Jimmy Johnson came in here, and we were lucky. We got to meet some of these people because in our world, they were kind of bigger than life. And the interesting part was our practice rink was on the back 40 of the Cowboys facility. So we would sneak over and watch practice or whatever, and we got to meet some of the coaches, and some of the coaches became big hockey fans, and it was almost like we were the little brother. And yet we cut our own niche, you know, we were able to cut our own niche in the community also.
So can you see this community getting back there to that place that you guys had them in '99?
I think we got to do our part more than they've got to do their part. It's a lot of work to be a fan in Dallas, and we got to make it worth their while. So we've got to be highly entertaining, highly competitive, and the fans have to know that coming to the rink, we're not only going to put on a show, we're not going to get outworked. And I think it's up to us now. They've done their part, now we got to do our part.
Coming up next, the emotional journey that led Hitch back to Big D.
I need to be picky, and everything for me was about who do I want to work for.
To pass, Lettinen, shot, tip, save, rebound, still loose, Hull. They score! That's it! Yes! 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 The Stars win the Stanley Cup! The Stars win the Stanley Cup! Unbelievable! Brett Hull just earned his $17 million on one shot.
When you look at that team, the way it developed, the way the guys worked together, and what you were able to achieve, what characteristics and attributes kind of stand out from that team that you will be looking for if you want another team to get to that same place?
I think what made that team special was realistic accountability. We had a group of athletes that were able to look each other in the eye and at times call each other out, but they held each other accountable to the highest level. Honestly, we just felt like the Cup was going to be the natural evolution of how we were building. We just felt like we were going to win the Cup. But it was because the players had really taken over from the coaches. We still instructed, but man, they held each other to such a high standard. I don't want to say it was easy to coach, but it was much easier for us. We didn't have to supply any of the emotion.
Somebody that I'm sure comes to mind when you hear how you answered that question is Mike Modano. And in your mind, what was that relationship like, and what did you see in the transition of that player under your watch?
I think the best way to describe it is Mike had the skill set to carry a team to the floor. But for us to get to the ceiling, he had to change. He really embraced it. And I remember a series of games. We went on the road in the first year, full year I coached in 96, 97. We went on the road and played 4 games, and he never had a point, and we won all 4 games. He was the most dominant player on the ice every night, and I think that started to convince him that he could make a difference even if he didn't score that night. That to me changed everything about Mike Modano as a player. He became the prototypical 200-foot player almost overnight. All this talk about best American-born player, best American this, I didn't like that. And the reason for me is he was just the best player. At that period of time, for 5 years, Mike Modano was the best player in the National Hockey League, bar none.
So from there, you had a few stops. Philadelphia, Columbus, St. Louis over the course of your career. Through all of those experiences, and I guess just facing that adversity as a coach, having to kind of pick up, start over, and do it a few times over, what did you learn throughout all of that, and how did it maybe contribute to the person and the coach that you are now?
Well, the Dallas experience really helped me in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia experience for me was very similar to the Dallas experience. We had a lot of good players, we had a lot of good teams, and the same thing in St. Louis. It was a tremendous experience in St. Louis. What I'm left with is how difficult it is to win a championship and how many good players you need to win to make the playoffs. In both situations, we were at the bottom of the barrel and went to the top of the barrel very quickly. And I think my experience in being able to do that is really going to help here. Help me and help the team, because I know how to do it. I've experienced it before, and I know what has to take place for us to be successful quickly.
So after your time in St. Louis, You publicly said that you were retiring, thinking about retiring. But what I'm wondering is, in that 4 or so months where you were not coaching in the league after a couple of decades of coaching, the teams are going to the playoffs. What was that period of time like for you when it comes to self-reflection and how you ultimately got the urge to come back and coach and say, you know what, I am just not done yet?
It was emotional for a few days, but I got to tell you, I really enjoyed getting away. And kind of hockey was in the background. So was the game on the television? Yes, but was I watching it closely? No. When you get fired, you get all the sympathy calls. And they come, and people are really respectful, and it's much appreciated by all of us. About 2 months into it, I started to get other calls from coaches. Same coaches calling, but different calls. And they were calls for help. In a very short order, it felt like I was coaching 12 teams. I was helping guys, and I was having the time of my life. I'd had this little game with myself where I was able to sneak into rinks and watch guys practice and watch teams play and stuff like that. And I really started to get revved up. And I thought, you're nuts. You love this too much. You're crazy to stop coaching because you love what you're doing. And it was these calls that I got that kept bringing me back, and found this energy from helping people. And I feel like that's what my calling is. I feel like I can help people, and I don't want to ever let go of that. So Julie, my attitude's changed now as far as that goes. Like, I know at some period of time my time is going to be up, like every coach is, but I just love helping people and helping teams get better, helping kids get better, helping coaches get better, helping staffs get better. I love that responsibility, and I don't think I ever want to let go of that.
I love that story, and I have to ask you about this sneaking into the rinks. So to go watch hockey, where were you going, and were you like full incognito mode?
I had got it down. I got caught once. I got caught in Detroit. A lady found me in Detroit, and they'd given me, I got a little chair in the foyer, and the lady I sat beside, she knew who I was, and all I did was just put a hat over my eyes and kind of rolled up the collar and hit around. In some places, I just went in and bought tickets. I felt like sitting in the press box was this big announcement, and I didn't want to do that stuff.
Right.
So I bought tickets, or I had friends put it at will call, and so I've had this game, and I really enjoyed it. And I'll tell you what, what's really interesting is everybody in our sport does everything for you. I don't do anything. The food's there, the travel's there, the charter's there, and all of a sudden you got to make your own arrangements. You got to find your own routes, you got to find your own hotels, you got to find your own way to the game. It was an eye-opener. I was scared to death that I was going to get lost on the highway. I couldn't find the rinks. I was scared to death, but I learned to do it, and I really enjoyed it.
And when you think about that period of time and how much happened, how much changed, and how you found yourself back here in Dallas, how does that make you feel?
Well, when I started thinking about coaching again, there was probably 2 or 3 teams that I'd said I want to go to. I felt like, you know what, I need to be picky, and everything for me was about who do I want to work for. Jim was a guy that I got to know in 2011 when I was embedded with Detroit for a few months, and he was one of the 2 or 3 guys that I said, gee, I'd like to work for him. And then the call came. I was living in New Mexico at that time, and Jim flew to Albuquerque, and we met in the airport in Albuquerque. I said to the people that I was hanging out with in New Mexico, I said, I'm not coming back without this job. I said, I don't care what it takes. This is the job I want. I want to go back to Dallas and work for the Stars, and I'm not coming back without this job. And lucky enough to get it.
Welcome back to Hitchcock, Full Circle. Well, Hitch was most definitely an integral part of this organization's highest of highs when they hoisted that cup in '99. But he was also a part of one of their most recent lows when his St. Louis Blues knocked the Stars out of the second round of the playoffs in 2016. But even on the opposing bench as head coach for the other team, Hitch says he saw something very special in this Dallas Stars team and their players that left him wanting more. I'll tell you from perspective of somebody on the other side of that Game 7 in the second round of the playoffs a couple of years ago, I really enjoyed hearing you say how much promise you saw in this Dallas Stars team as you were coaching against them.
Well, I use the term reckless energy, and I don't know why it got lost last year, but it did. To me, the Stars had this reckless energy that unless you matched the energy, it didn't matter what you did technically. If you didn't match the energy, you weren't going to beat them. And I thought that if you can continue to play with that energy, that's what Pittsburgh has now. And that's what Chicago had. And that's what LA had. And I felt like that was a winning strategy. And it fell off, and it fell off badly. But if it was there once, we could find it again. And selfishly for me, I'm not afraid to win. And I feel like there's a bunch of players that aren't afraid to win on this team too. And so I wanted to be part of that. And that's the selfish part. You know, it's good players, but everybody's got good players. But there's a reckless energy to guys like Jamie Benn and these guys that I think is contagious. And I think I can really bring out that energy, bring it back quickly again.
Fans, media, people want to draw comparison from Tyler Seguin to Mike Modano. How do you see any similarities?
There's a lot of similarities skill-wise. Mo had a lot of older players that had a great influence on holding him accountable. Tyler is in a situation where he's going to be one of the older players. He's going to be one of the guys that's going to have to be a leader here. So I see a lot of top-end potential on Segs to be a great player, but I think more important, he's going to have to become a great leader. So I told him that I'm going to be very demanding of him. I'm going to hold him to a really high standard, but I'm going to have his back in doing it. I'm not going to be throwing him under the bus or being critical in the media. I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to hold him to a really high standard, because if I can't get him to buy in, it's going to be challenging to get the rest of the team to buy in.
And what do you see in Jamie Benn and his potential?
I think when he's focused, he's unstoppable. I think he's got that rare combination of skill, speed, work ethic, determination. I got to tell you, I watch him work out in the gym, and he's a cut above everybody working out. And he's quicker, he's faster, he's stronger, he's got everything. And I need to get that focus back with Jamie and help him with it, because I see a special captain. I see a guy with potential to help us grow for a long, long time here.
So Jim Nill's been pretty busy. We were talking about it earlier. When you look at this team now and how it shapes up on the ice, do you feel like you have the weapons you need to really put something good and special together?
I think what Jim's done for me is he's brought our compete level to a whole new level. With Mathot, with Hansel, with Radulov, even with a guy like Pitlick, is going to be impressive. I know how to pace myself, but it's hard not to be excited. I mean, holy smokes. I know how good the Central Division is, but man, we got a fighting chance. There's nobody we need to take a back seat to here, nobody. And I feel like this is a rare opportunity for us for the next 4 or 5 years. It's going to be really difficult to get in the playoffs. It's going to be really difficult to win rounds in the playoffs. And it's going to be difficult to come out of the West. We get that. But we don't have to take a backseat to anybody right now. So that part's exciting. We can go into every game that we're going to play in the West and know that we're competitive with everybody. And we don't need the other team to have an off night. And that's a good feeling. And I think the excitement's going to grow, but I think, you know, I mean, this is maybe the salesman coming out in me, but I got to tell you, I feel like we're a must-watch team now. Like, we're never going to be out of a game. Competitively wise, I don't see us getting outworked very often. I think we're going to be must-watch.
I'll be watching. Just given your history here, what would it mean to you to get this organization, this franchise back, win another cup, and kind of close your career out full circle?
Well, I want to build a team. My experience with the cup is the final evolution of what happens when you're an ultimate team. Like, I don't want to live in the past, But there are things we can remember from what happened here before. I don't want to forget what happened here before. And it's not about living in the past and wondering, 1999 we won a cup. That's a long time ago. But the feeling in the locker room and the feeling on the ice and that togetherness and that camaraderie and that accountability, I want that back. That's what I want to learn from. I don't want to live in that time frame. The game's changed, everything's changed, I've changed, the way I think's changed, but that feeling that you get from the players, I don't want that to ever change. And I want to be able to produce that so this franchise can win long term.
Thanks for watching Hitchcock Full Circle. Hopefully, after hearing his interview, you guys are just as excited for this Dallas Stars season to start as the head coach. We'll see you in October.